Today we are going to look at converting measures between the customary and metric system. So we're looking at this in a ratio unit because we're still making comparisons and we're still going to use specific ratios to help us here. So you can see some of our vocabulary here. If you want to pause your video and fill in some of those vocabulary words, we have the U.S. customary system, which is the system of measurement that we use here in the U.S., which is why it's called the U.S. customary system. We use measurements for length, capacity, and weight. I circled the word weight so that is kind of a clue to help you remember the U.S. customary system. If you think about it, here in the U.S., when you step on a scale, you're measuring your weight. Then we have the metric system, and this is what many other countries use. It's a decimal system of measurement, and it's based on powers of 10. So we may use inches and ounces and pounds. In the metric system, they're going to use kilograms and centimeters and some different types of units. So it's powers of 10, and that's measuring mass versus weight. Conversion factor is the type of rate that we're going to use as we're making our conversions and converting these measures. And then unit analysis is just a fancy way to say, hey, this is which conversion factor we're going to use here. So the first chart that I handed out was this measurement conversion chart. And these are conversions that you've done in previous years in elementary school. So you should know things like how many inches in 1 foot, how many feet in a yard. However, we don't always memorize these. There's going to be some that we're going to forget because we don't use them as often. So you can go ahead and copy down. You can just pause this and copy down the ones that you need. Or I would just go ahead and get them all copied down. But again, I won't expect you to memorize these, but this is a really good chart for you to use. So here's our customary. And then we have our metric. And then down at the bottom, you've got your time, or 60 seconds and our 60 minutes. But then there's the abbreviations. So if you weren't sure, for example, how to abbreviate pounds or ounces or yards, you can see those abbreviations there. And then the other chart that I gave you at the bottom of your notes, it looks like this. So in the previous years in 5th grade, you converted in the same system. So maybe you converted from inches to feet or from ounces to pounds. And then maybe you went from meters to centimeters, that sort of thing. Now we're going to convert between the two systems. So we're going to go from inches to centimeters or ounces to kilograms. So we're going to be looking at both systems. Okay, so the first example I'm going to look at is going from 36 quarts to gallons. And this one in particular, these are both in the customary system, but we're going to use this particular example to practice setting up a conversion. So when we set up a conversion, I'm going to make a note up here, you always multiply by the conversion factor. So that keeps things consistent. So this particular problem is a fairly simple one, but when we start getting into more complex problems, you're definitely going to want to make sure you set it up this way every time. So our conversion factor, for example, in this one, if I look at my chart, I can see that there are 4 quarts in 1 gallon. So if I said 1 gallon equals 4 quarts, that is an example of a conversion factor. So that is a conversion factor. So how we set this up? We start with what we have. We have 36 quarts. And then we multiply, so I'm going to put the multiplication dot here, by the conversion factor. Here's my conversion factor, 1 gallon, 4 quarts. So we know a conversion factor is a rate, so we're going to set it up as a rate, which we know can be written as a fraction. So when I write this as a fraction, got my fraction bar, you want the unit you're trying to turn this into on the top. So if I'm trying to turn this into gallons, I'm going to put gallons on top, and I'll put my quarts on bottom. Okay. The reason I do this is because if I look diagonally now, quarts and quarts, since they're diagonal from each other, those are going to cancel out, so we're just left with gallons, and that's what we want. We want to turn this into gallons. So I'm just going to fill in what I know. I know that 1 gallon is 4 quarts. So now my problem is just 36 times 1 gallon, all of that over 4, which becomes 36 times 1, which is 36 over 4. We divide that, and that is 9 gallons. So 36 quarts is the same as 9 gallons. So let's use the same process, but to go from the metric system to customary. So this time we're going to go from 20 centimeters, and we're going to turn that into inches. So first we need our conversion factor. I'm going to flip this over, and I can see that 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. So that's what I'm going to use here as my conversion factor. So I'm going to start with what I have, which is 20 centimeters. Again, we multiply. I'm going to set up my fraction here. We are trying to get to inches, so I'm going to put inches on top, centimeters on bottom. So now we can fill in what we know. We have 1 inch, and we know that that's 2.54 centimeters. So from here, again, we can see our centimeters cancel out, so we're left with inches. That's what we want here. And 20 times 1 is 20, divided by 2.54. Now, if you want to use a calculator for some of these more complex problems just for the sake of time, I'm okay with that. But remember, you still need to exercise your brain just like we need to exercise our bodies. So when you're doing a problem such as 36 divided by 4, use your knowledge of your math facts. Don't rely on the calculator, just so you're still exercising that brain. Okay, so 20 divided by 2.54. Now, if you put that in your calculator, you're going to end up getting a decimal number like 7.87. I think it's like 4.2. It's a really long decimal number. It's not a big number. It just has a lot of decimal places. So kind of the rule of thumb I want you to always follow is to round to the nearest hundredth. So that's 2 decimal places. So I'm going to put my about symbol here because it's not exactly equal. And because since we're rounding, it's just about. And since it's 7.874, I'm going to keep it at 87. So I end up with 7.87 inches. No naked numbers. That's super important here, right? Because this whole thing is about units. So we don't want any naked numbers here. Okay, I want you to go ahead and pause your video and then try those 4 at the bottom here, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So you're going to set those up. For example, 48 feet is how many yards? You're going to set up your conversion factor. Start with 48 feet. You're going to multiply it. You want yards on top and feet on bottom. Okay. On number 3, I will tell you that 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams. That's going to be your conversion factor there. So go ahead and pause the video and give those a try, and then when you're done, you can unpause it to check your work. Okay, here's what I got for those 4 there. The only one you probably would have been okay maybe using a calculator on is number 4, although you really could have just multiplied that one out as well. Okay, one last problem we're going to work through here. This one has a few steps more than just what we've done so far, but we're going to kind of combine what we've done here. So first of all, we have this statement, 25 ounces. We're going to compare that to 2 kilograms. So before we even move on here, I want to talk about those less than and greater than signs. If you have a hard time remembering what those are, in elementary school you might have learned tricks like talking about which side the alligator eats, that sort of thing. That may be helpful to begin, but now we're going to get into just knowing what the signs mean without the numbers on either side, or you're going to have variables on either side. So if you have x is less than 2 plus 3x, you don't actually know which side is bigger, so you can't decide which one the alligator is going to eat. So a little trick that I always use, left and less, they both start with L, so if you use your left hand and you make that less than symbol in front of you, okay, there is your less than with your left hand. Okay, so what we're comparing is 25 ounces to 2 kilograms. However, if I were to just lay these objects in front and I said one's 25 ounces and one's 2 kilograms, but you can't touch them, you can't feel them, which one's heavier? You can't tell because they're 2 different units. So what we're going to have to do here is convert those 25 ounces to kilograms. So we're going to use 2 conversion factors because if you look at your sheet, we don't have anything that goes from ounces to kilograms. But we can go from pounds to kilograms. So what we can do here is change our ounces to pounds, and we know that 1 pound is 16 ounces. Then we'll go from ounces to kilograms. Or we'll go from pounds to kilograms, I'm sorry. So then we'll take the 1 pound, and we know that that's about 0.45 kilograms. So the first step is to use this conversion factor and change 25 ounces now to pounds. So I'm going to take my 25 ounces, and I'm going to multiply it by my conversion factor, which is 1 pound over 16 ounces. Okay, so my ounces are going to cancel out, so I'm left with pounds. So 25 divided by 16, this is one that if you put it in your calculator, that's okay. You're going to end up with 1.5625. So if I round that to the nearest hundredth, I get 1.56. So that's 1.56 pounds. So now we know that 25 ounces is 1.56 pounds. So now I'm going to take the 1.56 and I'm going to multiply it by my conversion factor to get to kilograms. So I want kilograms on top, a pound on bottom. So your pounds cancel out. You're left with 0.45. When you multiply that, you could put that in a calculator. You're going to get 0.704. So if I round that, I get 0.70 kilograms. So now from here, I can go back up to 25 ounces, and I know that that is 0.7 kilograms. So now I can compare. If I have 0.7 kilograms, that's going to be less than 2 kilograms.